Hi friends, and welcome to my weekly live stream. I'm Jérôme from Uno Platform, and I spend about an hour every week, when time permits, when taking a look at Uno issues and Uno news, and taking a look at contributors' PRs like we were going to be doing today. And today we're going to start first with some news with what's been happening in the WebAssembly space and with Uno Platform. So with the release of .NET 7, the support for SIMD, so single instruction multiple data, support for WebAssembly was added by the .NET team, and most of the browsers that were released, that are based on Chromium or Firefox for that matter, were having the support for SIMD available. And the one notorious that was not having SIMD was Safari. And as of 16.4, so with the latest release of iOS, the support for SIMD has been added, and it's introducing some interesting performance improvements. And it's going to be even more interesting when getting into .NET 8, where a lot of improvements have been added. So we're eager to see what that's gonna yield as results when moving to .NET 8, or at least the latest builds of .NET 8. When running on WebAssembly with SIMD enabled. So this article from one of our contributors has been quite interesting, and it shows a new wizard, but we're going to talk about this later on. And it shows how to do it with the use of the vector 128 intrinsic, and how to enable it with Uno. And it shows that it goes down from about 182 milliseconds to do some calculations, down to 2 milliseconds. So it's actually quite fast. So that's it's 10 milliseconds down to 2 milliseconds. I'm sorry. So that's pretty interesting. So if you're doing performance related work, that's something that you can take a look at. And now Safari is going to be it's not going to be different from the others. Previously when you wanted to enable this, then you have to do separate builds, one that would enable, let's say, threading, not threading, then SIMD and not SIMD. It made a matrix that was actually quite interesting. And now with .NET 8, that will allow us to have one target for everything, because all targets, I think, now do support all of it. And if we take a look at the WebAssembly matrix, if we go to webassembly.org, there's a matrix feature here. So it's called future features, but it's not really what it is. And if we take a look at SIMD, fixed SIMD here, we can see that all targets except WASM2C here, which is not a target that we support, do have support for fixed SIMD. And interestingly, there's also support for threads and atomics. So that means that threading is supported. So that means that right now, if you want to target most of the devices that are available out there, you can enable SIMD and threading. So threading is still a work in progress as part of the .NET team, but we expect that with .NET 8, there's going to be a lot more supported as a result. So it's going to be a very interesting period for the year. So going to the release of .NET 8. So there you go. So that's the first interesting part. The second part is we launched a new app wizard as part of the Uno Platform 4.8, so 2 weeks ago. And what we did is basically have a new wizard that allows you to select all those features. And I'm just going to jump in right after browsing through the blog post. And allows to create application customized to your needs, whether it's a blank application with nothing, or an application that uses all the features that Uno Platform is providing, like Uno navigation, Uno extensions, and MVUX, and the features related to UI creation. We also have improved material initialization. So if you were using Uno Platform with material, there were a lot of initialization that need to be added, and this is now a lot simpler than it used to be, and it can be combined with two new features. The one is the Roboto font update. Now we are providing the Roboto font as a NuGet package, That is something that we worked on for Uno 4.7. Now it's materializing further with Uno 4.8. And that allows you to remove the Roboto font that was previously in previous templates. We also have added design system package importing. So if you're using the material design theme builder, which is a site from material.io, where you can export all colors that are available as part of the customization of the theme that you're getting. This creates a zip file that you can put inside of your app, and then your app will be themed using all those colors. So there are a few there's a bit of documentation available for this, and you can take a look to enable that for your app. We're also introducing Resizetizer. That one is a port from the Resizetizer feature that's coming from the .NET team in Maui. So Jonathan Dick Reddith that's been working on this for a while, and it's a very interesting feature. So we basically ported that code over to Uno so that we can reuse the same feature set, and basically we're targeting iOS and Android underneath. So that's the same in Catalyst, but we also added support for WebAssembly and Skia targets, so that we have the whole set of targets working properly. We also added a few Uno extension features and the .NET 8 Preview 2 support. So that one is a very bleeding edge support for .NET. So there's a lot of things that need to be upgraded there. But if you want to take a look, you can take a look there. Let us know if you find anything. It should be very interesting. We're making updates to Uno so that it actually compiles with .NET 8. Completely, because currently Uno is only building up to .NET 7. It's compatible with .NET 8, but still, so we're making those updates so that we get to target .NET 8 completely and using those features that are coming from .NET 8, particularly the updates with a C# compiler that are pretty nice. So there you go. I see that there's quite a bit of people that joined the stream today. Jose, BuildCalc, Lenai, Mignets. Thanks for joining, everyone. And the wizard is actually pretty cool. And let's dive into the wizard quickly so that I can browse through the feature and tell you a little bit more about what all those are. So basically, when you create a new project, we've now made sure that we have all those templates that are added here correctly, and we migrated from a Visix experience that was based on Visual Studio templates now to a .NET New template exclusively, and our new template, the new wizard, is actually only using those .NET New templates, and that means that there's no diversions that may happen between anything that's created in Visual Studio and the one that are coming from the .NET New experience. So it's the same experience completely, and so basically we can create a new Uno platform app, and then when you click create, then you have the new wizard that shows up. You can see that the window is not placed properly. It's something that we're going to be fixing very soon. And you're provided with a set of options, either blank with basically nothing. So it's just a no dependency, just Uno and nothing else. And we have the default template, which is using all the MVUX material localization testing and everything that you can get into your app, so you get started faster to create your own app. So let's go and take a look at the customization for that wizard. You get access, so like any template, you can choose whichever target framework you want to use. You can choose the platforms. So you can see here we get all the targets that are available. You can even Linux framework. It's not new. It's everything that we had previously in the existing template. Then for the presentation, you can use either MVVM. So MVVM is just plain I95 per change. You can use the packages that are coming from the community toolkit with code generation, so that we can get nice helpers to get binding faster. And you can also have the MVUX that is provided by Uno Platform. If you want documentation, just head out to our documentation on the Uno Platform and see what that does. Also have the server project. We have UI testing and unit testing projects that are included for you. So unit testing using whichever framework you want. We're using MS Test by default, but you can use whichever you want. And UI test is using Uno UI test with Xamarin UI test underneath, and a bit of other frameworks that are doing UI testing for WebAssembly. For the features, just the PWA and Visual Studio debugging. For extensions, it's all the features that we're providing as part of the Uno extension. So dependency injection, configuration, HTTP, localization, navigation, and others. So you can choose, you get started very quickly without having to choose too much to get your application running. A bit of naming, and then the theme. So you can choose either Fluent or Material, and it creates your app as a result. So if I create the application, the visual aspect of the app is a little bit different from what we were having in the previous templates. And once everything started up, you will be seeing a few new folders. One with the backend project, and then the others that are related to platforms, tests, and data contracts. So it's all about getting your app to run with a minimum of behavior that shows what an Uno app can do. So it's fully featured. You have styling, you have the color palette. So the zip file here comes from the DSP export that you were seeing before in the blog post, and this is automatically created from that zip file. So you get all your colors without having to think too much about creating that application, that visual dictionary for your application. And I think that's it. I won't go too much into details. If you have any questions during the stream, let me know. We can go back to that template and take a look at what it does. So Miknitz is asking about the server project. What is it supposed to do? So the server project is providing you the ability to have your WebAssembly project hosted inside of the server project. And the idea here is that you can either launch that project directly. So if you publish that, then you're going to be having just a static file server, and that your application is going to be available right away. But you're not going to have a backend component for that application. So what you can do is, instead of deploying that application, you can deploy the server application, and this is providing a set of basic API features. So that means that you can invoke using the same site. And that's particularly important for websites. You can have using the same site and invoking an API that is bundled with your app. So basically, the app, your app is the index. Is served as the index of the base of the website, and then you can still access your APIs that are provided as part of the server project without having all sorts of security related issues. So that's the idea behind the server project. It's something that's when you're doing a Blazor app, you're going to get that as well. It will allow you to do a back and forth with your application. And another important thing. Actually, that one is not a. I was about to talk about Azure Static Apps, but this is not an Azure function. But you could also do that with an Azure function and publish that using. It would not be a server project, though. It will be a separate type of project. But you could use Azure Static Apps to deploy your WebAssembly app as the static site, and then use an Azure function to serve the same type of APIs as a result. So that's the use of a server project. Okay, so let's continue. A contributor has found an interesting issue that was mentioning that ListView visualization could cause items to be hidden forever if scrolling rapidly on WebAssembly. So that is pretty bad. And I actually tried to reproduce this, and it was actually pretty easy to do in the playground. So basically, I have a long list here, and if you can see that the first item is available here, and if I do scroll fast, it may disappear at some point. Not always, but sometimes it disappears. oh, you can see here that it actually disappeared. So this is there's supposed to be one item before, and it's not there, and that's a bit of a problem. So that contributor has been working on getting a fix for this. And what we're going to do is try to get to a repro as a unit test, as a runtime test, to validate that the behavior is actually where we can actually reproduce the issue, and validate that the fix that has been provided as part of that PR is working properly. So I already checked out that code with that modification. We can see here that the modification that was made by the contributor. So we're talking here about data mixing index. I haven't taken a look exactly at what that entails, but it looks like it's in the scroll change method. When you do something with a scroll change, it's probably not doing what it's supposed to do. But what we're going to do is just remove that change, and we're going to try to reproduce that using a runtime test. So I've just opened the solution, and what we're going to be doing here is open the solution using the runtime test for WebAssembly. And to do this, we are going to take a look at the cross-targeting override props file, and we're going to be changing it to be net 7, not net 8. Net 7. So this is for the net 2 and net 7 for WebAssembly and Skia. So this is the targeting that we use, and we're using this so that we can load the solution a bit faster. So let's go find WebAssembly. And we're going to be creating a small runtime test that pretty much does the same thing. That pretty much does the same thing as a test that I think I pointed to. There it is. So I can see here 1. So let's go to that test specifically. We're going to be reproducing that particular test to make it to have it validate that specific behavior. So let's go for that particular test. We're going to duplicate it and run it and see if we can reproduce the behavior. So it takes a bit of time because Visual Studio is still loading up. There we go. Okay, so that particular test is making a very small list and scrolling really long. So it makes a very long list, and it tries to scroll inside and try to make sure that it actually is doing the right scrolling and materializing the right item. So what we're going to do is doing take the same test, but we're going to validate that the items that we're scrolling to are or scrolling back to. So we're going to go back to down the bottom of the list, and then go back up to the beginning of the list and try to determine if we have the right items. So we're talking about a large list, scroll to end, then back up, and let's call it first item. Just first item. Naming is hard. Maybe I should be using ChatGPT to get that. So I hope I'm going to be able to test GitHub Copilot X very soon, so that we can have some more interesting interactions with the code during live stream. So that would be fun. I wonder, are you on the stream? Are you using GitHub Copilot currently, or any kind of AI tool? It's been very interesting to see all the developments that are happening in that space to make us go a lot faster. Okay, so it doesn't build because we have the global digit.json. So one thing to note here is that I have .NET 8 installed, and for some reason, well, no, it's not some reason, and I specifically specified that I want net 7, so it's not working properly. So what we're gonna do is go back to our file here. We have a global JSON somewhere at the top. and we're going to be removing that SDK dependency here. And let's try it again. Oh, I clicked on the wrong one. Okay, so Bill Cass saying no GitHub Copilot yet. ChatGPT about 50% success on that. Yeah, so I agree. It depends. It really depends. So it's all, the way I use it is to find the gems, not necessarily to build a whole app with it. But if I'm searching for something, sometimes finding the APIs is sometimes easier to get to when using ChatGPT. So that is one interesting thing to do. I wonder, so depending if you've used the GPT-4 GPT-4 for ChatGPT, sometimes it gets faster, or gives more detailed information. But yeah, I really wonder what the new GitHub Copilot is going to do. It's going to be very interesting. I have it enabled for that instance, so maybe we'll be able to use it with the test I'm trying to write. Okay, so let's see if I try to build again. I was trying to build only the runtime test assembly. Should be a little bit better this time. Okay, so it's still complaining a little bit because of .NET 8, but not too much, so that's fine. Okay. First build takes a bit longer, but we're going to get there soon. No UI WebAssembly, so that's good. So yeah, so for all ChatGPT stuff, yes, it's all, for me, it's all about finding the sweet spot where, you know, the code that's produced, not necessarily very interesting, but sometimes it gets to a specific set of APIs that it's going to use, or a specific algorithm that's going to be used, or, you know, and when we're talking about Copilot, it's all about finishing sentences that are pretty much what I need to do. But yeah, so ChatGPT is giving answers with WPF for WinUI. It works most of the time. It was the APIs are very close, so that's one of the interesting things with that. But if you guide it to say I want WinUI specifically, it's not doing a bad job at closing in on the right features. Maybe at some point we're going to have the ability to train models that are specific to individual project, and then if you connect your project to GitHub Copilot for a specific project, then it's going to do most of the heavy lifting of trying to find the right APIs to use just for you. That's going to be nice. Okay, so we have our container with a grid and height. So what we're trying to do is trying to get to the bottom. So we're going to the bottom here, and then we're going back to the top. So we're scrolling down to the end and just at the top. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to we're going to run the test and see how it behaves and if it actually catches the issue. Okay, so no build here. What's happening? The analyzer references 4.6. Okay, so it's probably because I probably should have forced a version of .NET there, but let's see. So it's .NET 8, and we're gonna be living dangerously, and we're gonna change the version of here. So we have the Microsoft Make compiler. We need to use a later version. Just because I have, so we need we need the latest version, and the latest version is 4.6.0.1.final. It wants to let me copy. Okay, let's go back to our WebAssembly filter. WebAssembly here. So while it's building, still, if you're doing some development, what do you think will happen in a year? If you're doing some development, is it something that it causes you trouble? Is it something all those AIs that are doing part of the developer job? Is it something that you think will just enhance everyone, or remove jobs from people that are not doing complex enough tasks or things like that? Is it what do you think? I tend to think that it will just enhance everyone because there is a shortage of developers. So so we're gonna get everyone superpowers and get faster and just not spend too much time doing small things. Yeah, it comes in handy for sure. Okay, so we have our test running, building. That's good. Okay, so we're at the sample app, and we're gonna see what happens. So we're still consuming a lot of memory, but not too much now. So we made improvements with the Roston code analysis feature. Was still, it's a very large solution, so there's a lot of types everywhere. So it's not surprising that it takes a lot of memory. Though I wish it were smaller. But till then, we're not at blowing memory up like it used to be. That's thanks to Yusuf that's been working on that particular type of improvements. We're getting better at that. So it's still building here. I think we have some linker maybe. Let's see, we're done. Okay. Let's see. So there were errors. Okay, so just the compiler that was complaining for something else. Let's see, what do we have? For system compiler. Okay, so it looks like the rebuild wasn't good enough. So let's close the solution and try it again. So you can see that moving to .NET 8 is not the simplest one, at least for now, using a preview 1 or preview 2. That's what that was the one that was published, but still is interesting. So it's informative and gets to finding interesting issues so that we can raise that to the .NET team. So for instance, there's an issue with the preview 1 or 2, I think, when you're doing a specific template with Uno, it freezes pretty much. So it's a bit annoying. But those are the risks of going with preview builds of .NET. If we still can't get building, I'm gonna be removing it so we go further along. Okay, so there are no errors. So on the next part, so if we get to reproduce the issue, we're going to take a look at another issue that's related to ListView. It's actually the class that's below, which is ItemsControl. And there were a few people that were having issues with DataContext, and binding the top level elements was not working properly. So for instance, here, if you're doing a data binding on the DataContext of navigation view item, it would break the bindings that would happen on the next item. So it's a bit problematic. So we're going to try to fix that once we're done with the list view here. So yeah, the memory consumption is staying at the right level, which is good. It's not blowing up. We'll see later afterwards when we get to do additional modifications if it stays at that at that memory consumption. Still have my other Visual Studio that's pinging up. I don't know which one that is. Yeah, that's Uno on the Uno on one side, and the Welcome. So the Welcome app here on the other side is for some reason taking CPU. So that's probably something that we need to take a look at. Okay. So we have our WebAssembly app that's getting there. And if it still takes a lot of time, we're gonna be jumping between the two, because I don't want you on the string to wait for Visual Studio to build. The samples app is actually getting quite bigger now. We've added a lot of samples, and it takes some time to build all the samples that we do have here. I don't remember how many files we do have, but I think we're around 800 something. So it takes a bit of time to process all of it. Okay, there we go. So now we should be, well, Control F5 is rebuilding everything, but that's only for the first or second launch. So maybe it's going to be faster the second time. There you go. So it jumped only to the last part. It should be a little bit faster, I would hope. So I know that the Visual Studio team has been working on getting the up-to-date checks in Visual Studio faster. I know there's an option somewhere in the preview bits. So I don't think it's preview feature. There's one that's called fast update or something, fast up-to-date checks or something. Maybe I should be enabling this to get faster builds. Okay, so we have a problem here with I don't know what that is. Looks like we're not running at the right location. Maybe it's because it's HTTPS. So let's see if we change the path here. It's not supposed to be HTTPS. I don't know why it's running that one, but not that one either. Let's go for just a WASM sample app. Let's see if it's going to be better. The combination of preview and .NET 8. I'm not even sure if that's fixed. So in preview 1, Visual Studio 17.6, I think it's the 17.6. There was an issue with launching WebAssembly app, and now I think it's been fixed. So we're at preview 2. Okay. So question, any news on .NET 8 fixing C# Java interface speed? So I do know that some work has been put there by the Android team. Well, actually, .NET Android team, they worked on some of the APIs that were causing issues. Wow. Okay, that's quite interesting. Okay, so it looks like .NET 8 is causing trouble, so we're going to be removing all of this and see if we can get something working better. I would have thought that selecting, so we have our JSON global JSON file here, and selecting, we're just going to be reverting back the change, and we're going to be removing the allow priorities. My guess is that there's something that's causing a lot of trouble here. So let's try again and see if we get something more interesting there. Okay, so now it looks like we don't have 7.0. So I do have 201, not that version. So let's select that one. So yeah, on the .NET 8 for Android, I know they've worked on some of the bindings issues. For instance, I know they're doing a lot of um, reflection during invoking native methods, and it takes a lot of processing time just to do seemingly very naive calls and very things that should be very fast. So I hope that's going to help. I mean, Uno is highly dependent on this, and we identified a few issues with this where we had smaller APIs that were doing all sorts of complex processing related to 701. Okay, so that's good. Very important processing related to dictionaries. So they were doing dictionary calls. They are doing dictionary calls on every single call that happens, and sometimes it's fairly easy to avoid. So that's something that we open an issue for, and we'll see. Maybe that's something that the team is going to help improve there. Let's hope. Have you been impacted by the performance issues on Android? Because some of the apps that we're providing, some have issues with Android. So especially if you compare iOS and Android for the same code, there are pieces that are a lot slower than they should be. But they know about it. So that's the good part. Yeah, exactly, night and day. And I'm pointing most of it on the GNI API. So the GNI is actually a very slow API, slow enough that the Android team, so the actual Google side, for Android 13, they spent a bit of time optimizing. I think they put a 2.5 times faster API behind GNI, and I hope that's going to show. And if I remember correctly, I think it was at the last Google I/O. You mean so WebAssembly I/O on iOS is faster than Android IoT? Wow. Okay, so that's interesting. I haven't done that kind of benchmark, but that's pretty interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, it depends on the type of code. So if you're interacting with Java code, those pieces of code may be slower. But if you're doing pure .NET without having no interaction with any native code, that should be pretty fast. Otherwise, that means that there's another significant problem. So when you're saying that you're using Android AOT, are you using full AOT and not profiled AOT? Because if you're using profiled AOT, you may be having some trouble. Come on. Okay, so it rebuilds again because I closed Visual Studio, so that's why it's building again. That's a lot of waiting. That is a lot of waiting. So yeah, if you're using profiled AOT specifically with Uno, the problem with that part is that profiled AOT is mostly optimizing for things that are MAUI oriented, because we cannot create, especially if you're using .NET 6 or up. The profile has been generated to optimize for MAUI binaries, and Uno has no MAUI binaries. So that means that a lot of the content that's generated is being jitted, and it takes a while to do so. So you may want to not use profiled AOT. So it's not working. So that is very interesting. So, yes, I know. Okay, so that's the bug that I was talking about. So this part is, and you can see that the tooling is actually trying to launch the samples app wasm binary, and it's not supposed to do so. So what happens is that we're running the preview version of Visual Studio, and it doesn't work with our version. So let's try to run it with latest stable. So let's see. Let's go with 17.5 for now. Looks like I'm not signed in for some reason. I probably reset the instance a while back. And this recognized me. Good. Okay, so let's go for the Uno project again. So we're going to wait a little bit. I think it's going to be populating itself. Yeah, it does. Nice. Okay. The joy of doing test development. I probably should be changing that somehow to avoid having preview versions all the time. Are you on the stream? So for people that are listening, are you using preview versions of Visual Studio, or are you just waiting for stable bits? I mean, in my position, I need to go and look for the preview bits because if I'm not using previews, then you probably are going to be impacted by bugs or regressions that we may have code on earlier. But yeah, it's actually quite important. Okay, so let's see. Right, performance improvement, yes. I mean, I haven't noticed performance improvement in Visual Studio in a while. You know, they were making large jumps in performance. I think it was at the actually when Visual Studio moved to 64 bits. At that time it went faster. But since then, not much improvements. I don't know whether it's where the time is spent, to be honest. Maybe it's all taken to have Visual Studio build on ARM64. I don't know, but it's not moving that much. Okay, so it's still building. This time I think it should be working fine. I don't know if there was a report for this, so I'll probably take note to get that reported properly, because people are going to be having that issue. There you go. Okay, that's better. Good. Okay, so if we go to our runtime test here, and then we're looking for the change that we needed to have here, and it's called when large list scroll. So there's two things here, but let's paste that one here. Then we can just run the test and see what it visibly looks like. Okay, so we can see here that one is not here. But the interesting thing here is that we're still at the end where we should have been going at the top. So we're at the bottom for some reason. We're not going back up. So I wonder if it's because the scroll offset should be something else, maybe. Let's make the items a little bit smaller so that we have let's make the list a little bit higher as well. And then let's go for maybe 0 is a problem. So let's go for 10 instead. So the test will fail this time, I think, because we're going to have more than 5 items materialized because of the height of the list view that I've changed. I wonder why it's trying to rebuild everything here, because the tooling is not supposed to be picking up any changes in those projects, because we only have changed the given list view based tests. So I wonder if there's something else that we could change. We could actually take a look at that quickly. So in between. There's an option in Visual Studio, I don't know if you know about that one, where it tells you why a project is being rebuilt. That's actually quite important if you want to troubleshoot the build speed. And it's something that changes often. So there we go. So we have the auto reloads. That's nice. feature from Visual Studio. So let's start again and see if we have our scrolling getting better. Okay. Okay, so we can see that we scrolled almost to the top. Okay, so we're at the first item. We can see we're actually mixing more than one because we have two and then we're at the top. And every time I scroll back up, I get one more item out of it. So that's very nice. Okay, so it shows that the issue is here. Now, let's try to figure out what happens there. So we should be able to get the first item to see if it's actually materialized at the right place. Too good not to share. So let's see. Sasha has been. Oh, that's very nice. Okay, so that's a very nice. Someone that has been tweeting this. And what? Okay, so it's a tweet about an app that's supposed to be that's supposed to be in XAML. That's pretty nice. Well, that's very complex. There's a lot of controls in there. Wow, that's a very nice app. It's doing all sorts of sorting and selecting and moving around. Wow, that's a very, very nice app. With selection, oh, wow. So take a look. That's very nice. Sasha posted the link. It's a very nice app. You know, it's a lot of controls, and we've made progress, you know, in Uno to be able to do all of that because they're having that many controls visually, not necessarily something that is very easy to do. And if you were talking about this about 2 or 3 years ago, Uno was able to do this, but not at the performance that you're seeing visually currently. So that's very nice. Okay, so let's continue. So we know that we do have our item that is supposed to be happening at the top, but it doesn't show up. So they don't show up, which is what we expect to have. So now we are going to try to find a way to see if the items that we're getting are positioned in the right place. So to do this, we're going to be using the feature that's called the API that's called container from item, or from index. Let's go for index. So we're going to get the first one because it's supposed to be the container, the visible container. And what we're going to try to do is get the layout position of that item. So it's supposed to be placed at the top. And if it's not at the top, that means that we have a problem. So let's go and scroll to 1 instead of 10. So that it actually goes almost to the top. It looks like 0 is not working properly, but we'll see. And we have something that's called, I think it's layout helper. No, it's not that one. It's called layout slot. Layout slot. So we have the layout slot here, but there's an API to get that. Well, actually, let's use Copilot. Let's see what does it say. If it's able to. Doesn't look like it's telling me anything here. Or maybe I do have an older version of Copilot. That may be. Yeah, it's a very old one. Actually, it's not Copilot. Now that one is IntelliCode, so it's not the right one. Okay, so it doesn't work. So that's for later. So I don't know which API that is. So we're going to try to find which one it is. Layout slot. So we're going to find the uses of that API and see which one that is. So we have layout slot here. It's the UI element layout slot. No, it's not that one. I think there's another one. Okay, let's use that one for now, and we'll see where that goes. So we're supposed to be saying that layout slot dot x y is supposed to be what is it supposed to be? Let's go for let's go for a 0. Let's see if it's less or equal to 0, and we'll check if it's what we want. So we're talking about the first container, and that first container is supposed to be at the right location. So we're going to see if we get something interesting out of it. Oh, I forgot. So let's quickly troubleshoot why we do have additional builds that are happening that should not be. And this is in the build and run. No, it's not that one. Oh, they changed it. So they call it SDK style project for the lack of a better name. Don't call them as builder project appears up to date. That's good, but we still want to have something interesting. So let's go for info and see if we can get something interesting out of it, and see why a project is considered okay. What do I have? Do I have an error somewhere? Dependency object does not have layout slot. It does not, because it's dependency object. So I should be casting that to at least a framework element. I'm going to see if we can get something interesting. Okay, so if we search again at this, so it says ignoring up-to-date checked items with kind implicit build. Okay. No inputs are newer. Okay, so it actually goes through most of them, saying that nothing is, so everything is up to date, so that's good. There's some that are marked as not being up to date for some reason. So Uno UI Wasm, it really is. Project is up to date. Okay. Okay, so we have, oh, that's interesting. Okay, so we have MSIL that is causing changes. So that one is interesting. It's probably caused by the tooling that is doing JavaScript, TypeScript generation. So it's probably modifying the files incorrectly. And because of that, then we get changes, and then it tries to rebuild every time. So that may be something we can take a look at. Okay. So let's run it again. What do we get this time? Okay, it still works. Okay, it worked this time. So that's interesting. So it worked, but it's not supposed to have been working. Okay. Oh, that's not nice. Okay, so it scrolled, but not fast enough. So maybe I should be doing it twice. Let's see. If I do, so maybe it's because I did 10, I don't remember. I'm gonna scroll twice. Let's see if it helps. So we can see that the layout slot really is at 0, but maybe that's the problem. So we maybe need to check the second one to see if it's actually greater than 0, but let's say not bigger than 50, I would guess. So we probably could be taking a look at that. This project appears to be a candidate for build acceleration. To opt in, accelerate builds in Visual Studio property to true. Okay, probably try that. We have that property that's available to use in our template, but I don't think we're enabling it by default. Okay, so it's still working, but for some reason it's not scrolling. It looks like it's a timing issue. So let's see if we change the timing. So instead of we're going to be waiting a little bit. So let's do fast delay. Let's wait 200 milliseconds in between. Let's see if it changes something. So I wonder if the build acceleration feature that is there is because that feature is based on the use of reference assemblies and the generation that the tooling is able to do. But I don't know if the project that's at the end is able to say, you know, nothing changed. I don't need to rebuild my main assembly because nothing changed, and the reference assemblies that the main project is referencing didn't change, but the output binary did change. So if it can skip the build as a result, that would be something interesting. Probably take a look at that and see if it helps. Okay, so did it change anything? So it's supposed to be scrolling. Okay, that's good. Okay, so you can see here that we're at the top, and 2 is the first item, and we have a null reference exception because the first item is not been materialized, so there's no container for it. And we do have an issue, so that's interesting. So maybe we don't need this time to scroll that much. Let's see if we just scroll. We just do wait for 200 milliseconds here. So what we need is to say first container should not be null. Actually, the second one should also not be null, but let's do that for the second one as well. So the second container should not be null as well, but it should be. And that is interesting. So if it's the second item, we have items of 50. So it should be equal yeah, it should be 50 because it's positioned exactly at that location. So it should be 50, and that should be enough. So let's change that property that we just saw. Let's see if what the build does. So if we go to our override file, we have that property that's been set. Let's see if it behaves better. Oh, it's not there. Okay, so I thought we had it. Probably is in the sample. Okay, so it would be the accelerate build in Visual Studio. So I'm going to be putting that at the end, and let's see if it helps us having faster builds. So if I do Control F5 again, it actually rebuilds everything this time because I changed the file. So it detects that the a props file that was used by every project that's changed. So it rebuilds the whole thing. So that means that the next change that we're going to make is going to be more interesting. But still is that we have a few items that need to be validated. That one is not supposed to be something that is changing. It's a target. It's a TS file that's not supposed to be used in any capacity for the whole project. So it's just a waste of time. So you can see here, I don't know if you've noticed, but here you have the small icon here that says that something's moving. And it's actually driven by Visual Studio. That says when a build is happening, it's going to tell you that page is going to be reloaded when the build is finished. So that's a nice feature. Okay, so scrolling, and it fails. Okay, so it's not supposed to be null. That's good. Okay, so now we do have something that is interesting, and we're validating that the first item is not what it's supposed to be. Now what we can do is go back to the ListView file that was modified by our contributor and take a look at the fix and see if it helps. So let's try it again and see. Let's see if our super duper build, faster build is doing something. And by the looks of it, it is not, but I'm not too sure. It says the props target file, the override file is newer for some reason. So it's still building. Well, we expect to have Uno UI WASM to build because we changed the file that's in that project. So that's expected. Now we'll see for the next build if it actually does it. So I wonder why did you have that condition? It looks like there's something that makes it you have to build twice for the up-to-date checks to work properly. We're gonna have to find that out, or at least report it. At least it builds faster than it was at the beginning of the stream. That's very good. They have a lot of memory consuming. 10 gigs is actually quite high, but yeah, it looks like there's more happening here because we changed more binaries below. So it looked like it was still doing something different as a result. Okay. Okay, so now we do have the fix in place. And does it work? It does. Okay, so let's run it multiple times and see if it helps. Scrolling down to the end and scrolling back up, and it does work. Okay, so that's very good. So what we could do is maybe do it twice. We could do it on a loop and just making sure that that actually works multiple times, because it seems to be sensitive to changes. So let's see in our ListView base test what happens there. So let's say, well, maybe not that file. So we could probably do this one. Let's do it twice, just to be sure. Okay, so there we have it. And we also, and that's the other thing, we validated that the second container was the right one, and that it was actually located at the right place, which was at 50. So that's a very good fix. So I thought we would have had the time to take a look at the data context issue, and probably going to be for next week. Now that we're almost at the hour, we're actually past the hour now. So is it building faster? It's not building faster. So it's not doing what I expected to be doing. And I wonder, because we're doing a lot of processing, for XAML and everything else that happens directly in the head app, but most of the time we're not changing the content of that application. We're just rebuilding because we changed something. And if it was in a separate assembly and using that feature that uses the reference assembly, maybe we would not be paying that cost of rebuilding every time. So that may be something we can change in the structure of the solution, so that we have just one more project, but to benefit from that result. Okay, so we're doing it multiple times and it actually worked. Good. Then that means that the fix is working. So there was a question from the contributor that was asking for a way to know what the layout slot is. And that is an internal API, but there's a public API for it. So now we're going to be finishing on this. There you go. That's layout information. I was missing that one. So it's layout information, and you can give it, you can basically give it the items that you want to have. So so get layout slot for the second container, and it's going to be giving you a rectangle with the right positions. So instead of using the internal member that's not available on WinUI, we're going to be using the public member. Just let's see if it actually continues to work. It should be. Actually, let's do it. Let's validate 3 times. Just 3 times this charm. Is that what we say? It's still rebuilding the Uno Wasm binary for some reason. It says it looks like there's something that that was forced to rebuild even though nothing changed. I wonder what that is. Oh, there's that one that was rebuilt. Oh, it's the cross-targeting override props. Okay, so that one looks like it's a bug then, because that file has not changed. So it's actually flagging the file as being newer, but nothing's generated. So as a result, then it marks it as something that needs to be processed, but it's not. So it kind of loops itself into trying to do something, but it's that's interesting. Probably something that we could report. Because the modifying that file doesn't impact the output. So the output is not updated. So it says that the PDB is actually built later, earlier than that file. But because nothing happens, then the caching is not doing its job properly. Very interesting. Okay, so we have the same test. And it works properly. We had 3 iterations here, and it works properly. So good job on the contributor for doing the right fix. And it was all about having the row section at the right index. So that's very nice. And we're going to be finishing quickly on just a validation to make sure. So if we made I wanted to make sure that we had the right. So if we're not changing that file and we're building, I just wanted to see that, let's say if we change only one part of the project, that it actually rebuilds only what we need. And if so, if we can make changes to the samples app so that it actually has one more project, maybe that's something that could be interesting there. Okay, so I've not changed anything. If I do a build, so this time it should be. Should it be? What should it do? Okay, so this time it still says the same thing because I have not rebuilt. So let's do a rebuild so that the output is actually later than the props file. And then we're going to try again and see if it actually does what it's supposed to be doing. So maybe that's a warning that we could put in the file. So when we say to contributors that the cross-targeting file props should be modified, the important part is to make sure that you close Visual Studio when changing it. Well, I'm sorry, not closing Visual Studio, but if you change that file, you need to do a rebuild. And maybe that's something that we could force there to say that if that file was changed, then maybe the up-to-date checking is not as fast as it could be because the file is detected as changing, but the outputs do not change as a result, and it fails to go faster. So that's very interesting. I don't believe there's a way to force building to force the output to be rebuilt as a result, but maybe we can do something about it. Actually make a flag or something that says that the output should be rebuilt every time there's a change that happens in that file. Okay. Almost there. So we're building the runtime tests, one of the bigger ones, and then we get to the samples app. We're at 21 gigs of RAM, so that's a lot. I don't know which one's taking the most. You know, they're all taking a lot of memory. The BSS compiler is hosted process, but I'm not too sure exactly why. So I know we've been looking at memory again, and continuing to take a look at memory to understand what's taking that much memory. But it looks like we still have a few things to look out for. Almost there. Okay, so the build is finished. So now if we change, let's say just that one, just make that small modification and we try to rebuild. What does get built? So we have Lottie Wasm, which is detected as changed because there's a file that the d.ts file that is considered modified, so it tries to rebuild. That makes sense. It's a problem, but it makes sense. But it looks like it skipped the others, so that's good. Yeah, it skipped a lot, so that's very nice. And at that one, we're building, I don't know which one that is. It looks like it's Lottie, maybe. No, it's another one. I don't know which one that is. Maybe MSAL or something. Oh, okay. So that is interesting. So you can see here that it says potential build warning, build performance issue. The project does not appear up to date after a successful build. And that file is considered not up to date. Okay, so they're actually showing the error now. So that's very interesting. So maybe they should be showing this all the time. I didn't see that line when no logging was enabled. It's actually pretty serious in build time. Okay, so for some reason it's not, it looks like it's stalled. Oh, no, the compiler is still working. No, it's stalled. Okay, so it looks like we're going to end on that for today. So that's it. We have a test that we can add to the PR for validation. So that's very nice. We're going to see if at runtime it does what it's supposed to be doing. Is particularly because it's going to be running also in Skia, not just on Wasm. So we're going to be updating the contributors PR with that change and see how far we can go. And so that's it for today. I hope you liked the stream. It was an interesting one with all those WebAssembly and ListView things and preview bits to take a look at. And until next week, happy coding, and see you next time. Bye for now.